Hi everyone, my name is Gabrielle Christofich and I am creating a video here today on the MS900 exam. So I actually took the AZ900 exam in January of this year, so January 2021, and I just recently took the MS900. More specifically, I took it 4 days ago, so it's still pretty fresh in my brain. I kind of jotted down everything that I can kind of think about that is really important to talk about, and I hope this is helpful for you. I hope this is like a good starting point. It's definitely not comprehensive by any means, so definitely, refer to the document that is going to be listed in the YouTube description for this video to kind of, cross-check and also look at the links for all the resources that I'll be kind of discussing here. So the first thing that I want to just talk about is, people ask me, is the MS900 harder than the AZ900? Weirdest thing, I actually went into the AZ900 exam feeling a lot more confident than I did about this exam, that I actually scored higher on this exam. I got an 868 versus the 805 that I got on the Azure test. So was it harder? I think to study for it actually felt harder than the Azure exam because there were just so many topics, so many things to cover, and I felt like the more I learned, the less I knew, and so it just kind of kept going and kept going and kept going. So that was just kind of my experience with it. You might find it to be a lot more simple. That's great. And I just want to kind of go over a few different study tips, tricks that I kind of found along the way to really help with this exam. And so I actually created another video for the AZ900. So definitely check that out if you're going to be taking the AZ900. This session I'm going to kind of structure a little bit differently than that one, just because I feel like the content was just kind of designed to be studied a little bit differently. So I'm just going to share my perspective. It may not be what works for you. That's fine. Everyone has their own thing. Do what feels best for you. These are just kind of things that worked for me. So the first thing is that I really recommend getting like a notebook, and I actually started with a one subject notebook for the MS900, and then I quickly found out that this was not nearly not enough space for all of the notes that I was taking, so I actually got a 5 subject notebook as well, and I ended up using quite a bit of this one. But as you can see, I have notes listed here all in different colors. I have, sections of the content highlighted, kind of marked out. And something that I would do is I would definitely start with one notebook, like a bigger one, like a thicker one, for the M365 material. And then I would actually get a one subject notebook to have on the side, because the structure that I did was I went through all of the Microsoft Learn material, and I wrote it all down in this book, and then as I was going through the practice exams, I'd be taking notes on those as well, or I'd be referring back to this main source of notes, and I wanted somewhere else to put it. So that's what I would do with the second notebook, is I would use that for, writing out the answers to the practice test questions. I would use it to kind of, jot down things that maybe you're studying about, but you want to learn more about it. So you kind of have one place to kind of, first of all, write all your main notes out, do your main source of studying, and then in your second notebook, kind of use it as like a journal almost to kind of pair with this one. And the other thing that I did was I took so many notes for this test that I actually ordered all different kinds of pens. So I got, check this out. I have all these different color pens right here. I have some more over here too. I have red and pink and all different colors. And I also have some highlighters that I use as well. So I wrote so much for this test and studied so much that I actually got sick of seeing the same color on my paper. So I had to like change colors pretty frequently. And I discovered these one pens. They're the Bic Velocity pens, and these have a pretty nice grip to it. And so I found that writing was the most comfortable on this one. I actually started getting like a blister on my finger because of how much I was writing for this test. So that's what I would do. You don't have to be as extreme as me. I just love colors and I love pens and highlighters and all sorts of fun stuff. So that's what I have going on over here. And the way I kind of used those was I would just go through the material, write everything out, and then what I would do differently if I were you when I was studying, I would actually kind of mark down and highlight and circle important things as you're going. I kind of waited till the very end, and then I had to go back and go through all of my notes again to kind of spot out the important information. And it took a lot of time because there is just so much material in this exam. So that's kind of my recommendation on how to study it. I learned best just by writing and kind of circling and highlighting and going through material again and again. That's kind of my process, but whatever works best for you. The other thing that I would do is I would definitely get a pair of, I don't know where they went. Oh, they're over here. My bad. Get a pair of blue light glasses because these literally changed my life. When I was studying, I would just put these on and it just helps block out the light from the computer and just made it so much easier to study, like especially at night. Definitely take care of your body, take care of your eyes, make sure you're exercising and sleeping and, eating well and snacking and staying hydrated, all of those things, very, very important. As far as the actual exam material, so I think I kind of covered just the logistics, how I studied, what worked best for me. I'm going to share kind of the key themes, key vocab, questions you should be asking yourself while you're going through this material. So this is not meant as like a comprehensive review by any means. This is meant to just kind of help you, guide you on how to study, what to look for, how to approach the material. And, if I give an example of something, it's not like the only thing there is pertaining to that specific subject. I'm going to kind of just list out the things that really stuck out to me when I went through this process. And honestly, I cannot even tell you one question that was on the exam. It was such a blur for me. I don't even know. I literally, if you ask me, can you give me an example of a question on the test? I literally cannot even tell you because I don't remember. But here's what I will say, okay? The first thing is that if you're going to take the Azure exam, I would do that first because M365 is literally built on top of Azure, okay? So a lot of the concepts from Azure, a lot of the concepts around like IaaS and PaaS and SaaS and, infrastructure as a service, which I just mentioned is IaaS, that kind of stuff will also show up on this test. I was kind of surprised by how many questions there were that felt really familiar, like really similar to the Azure exam. So if you're going to decide which one to do first, do the Azure exam most definitely first, study that material, and then go into M365. So I'm just going to kind of talk really briefly about kind of these things. In M365, I think Microsoft does an incredible job of really accomplishing their mission of like empowering users to like do more and be more and achieve more. It's kind of ingrained throughout everything that M365 has to offer. So, as you're kind of like going through this, there are kind of different ways that Microsoft brings that idea to life. And in the M365, three of kind of the main themes are collaboration and engagement, identity and authentication, and security and compliance. And those are not anything that like Microsoft actually wrote out. I just kind of group those things, everything into those 3 categories. You're going to see that over and over again, okay? And so as you're studying, as you're going through the material, some key vocab, you know, ideas to kind of look out for are capabilities and features. Okay, so what are the capabilities of X and what are the features of X? All right, how do you manage? Okay, so management. How are things managed? Admin, who's in control of managing these things? Updates, what are the updates? How are they being updated? Configure, okay, so how is everything configured? Compliance, what does that look like? Compliance is built into everything. Govern, okay, so how is everything governed? How is data governed? Security, okay, security again is like built into everything. Audits, reports, analytics, okay, all of this documentation that is created. Be on the lookout for that kind of stuff too. Policies, Azure AD, okay, Azure Active Directory. It is ingrained, it is built into M365. Identity is like the center of everything that goes on in M365. So if you protect the identity, you can protect the data. That's within whatever it is that you are using. So there is a lot going on with protecting a person's identity in M365. You're also going to be looking at groups. You're also going to be looking at billing and licensing. Okay, so types of licenses for M365, how people are billed for it, what that looks like. Support, okay, so how do people get support with their products? Health, okay, so the health of their networks, the health of, you know, what's happening kind of behind the scenes of the M365 products. How do you monitor all of that? Hybrid identity, again, going back to the identity idea again. Integration, so how does everything integrate? And storage, okay, so how are things stored? So, you know, that's some of the key vocab. Again, it's on the list, so make sure you just kind of browse through that list, look at those words. Those are words that I kind of pulled out from memory, okay? Important words and concepts. And so, you know, in terms of strategy for this exam, I would really say that, you know, keep these types of questions in mind. So if you want to do X, right, then you must use Y. So as you are going through and you're learning about their different products and services, make sure that you are getting the big idea. Like, this exam is not super in-depth. I felt like Azure was a lot more in-depth. Microsoft 365 is broader, so the MS900 is broader in topics, but the testing wasn't as in-depth. So a lot of what you're going to be studying is just all different products and services across the board, and, you know, how those things all connect together and what they are used for, so what their purpose is, okay? And, you know, definitely pay attention to anything that has numbers. So if something says, oh, there are 2 categories to this, or there are 3 components to that, make sure that you know what those 2 or 3 things are. And make sure that you know a little bit about each of those things, so that if you saw a definition of it, you would know which, you know, topic or which service it was correlated with. So for example, Microsoft Office can be extended by using task pane add-ins and content add-ins. Make sure you know what those are. You know, Microsoft Graph provides 2 options when integrating into applications: REST API or native SDKs. Okay, so make sure you know what those are. Kind of know what Microsoft Graph does. Know what it's about. And so a lot of the challenging part about M365 is that there's so many similarities in the services. So make sure that whatever you're studying, if they seem similar, make sure you know what their key differences are. So for an example, Teams and Yammer both provide collaboration, but Teams is really for real-time internal projects, right, on teams working together. And Yammer is more for the communication across an organization. It acts more of like a social network. So really understand those 2 things. Those are huge. You know, another second example would be like SharePoint versus OneDrive. So both act as file storage, But make sure you know the key differences. That's really, really key to this exam. So customization, right? Customization is like such a big component of M365. You can customize pretty much anything. If you cannot customize it, what can you control? So make sure you kind of study up on that. And make sure that you really pay attention to how services integrate with each other. So, like, for example, Microsoft Endpoint Manager, okay, I kind of thought it's this one thing. But really, Microsoft Endpoint Manager is a combination of different things. It's a combination of Configuration Manager, with Intune, with Desktop and Analytics, with Co-Management, with Microsoft Autopilot, and Microsoft Defender. So you have Configuration Manager, Intune, Desktop Analytics, Co-Management, Microsoft Autopilot, and Microsoft Defender. You have these 6 things all together that create Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So make sure that you know what all those individual components do, but also understand how it integrates into the whole of Microsoft Endpoint Manager. Okay, that makes sense. And so along with that integration, think about how apps and services can be connected into the different platforms. So for example, Teams can be extended with Power Platforms. And there are 4 different ways that it can be extended: extensions, webhooks, bots, and tabs. So make sure you know what those 4 things are, for example, and know what kind of examples would fit into each of those 4 things. So that's just one example of integration. There are so many examples of integration in M365. Another big one is communication. So what are the types of communication in M365? Is it formal? Is it informal? Who can communicate inside an organization versus outside of an organization? What tools can they use to use that? How do you manage the communication? Okay, that's another big one. And so some other topics, and I'm not going to be including Azure Cloud Concepts in this, okay, just as a reminder. So IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, I won't be talking about, but definitely know what WAS is. So WAS is a new one for M365. Windows as a Service. Definitely know what that is. And in terms of content, like for M365, make sure you're studying who gets updates, okay? When can you get the updates? What are the types of updates that you could get on there? So I have examples of these all listed in the document as well. Really important stuff to know. Identity and security, what is the zero trust security model? Everything in M365 is built off of that. What is just in time and just enough access? How do you handle threats within an organization versus outside of an organization? How do you encrypt? How is data encrypted at rest? How is data encrypted in transit? Okay, so, kind of know a little bit about that. What is conditional access? Conditional access is huge. It's a huge component of security. Note that Azure AD Premium is, where that is actually included. You can't get conditional access in just a regular subscription. So kind of know how these features and different things play into the subscription tiers as well. And, when we're talking about conditional access, single sign-on is also another aspect of security. Know what single sign-on is, know how it's used, know when you would use it, know the benefits of it. What is a secure score? What does it measure? There are different components about that. And what are app protection policies? App protection policies are a really big deal at M365. There's this theme around what happens if an employee loses their device, right? Or how do we prevent employees from downloading work files, right, or confidential data onto their own personal devices? Know how to answer those kinds of questions. What are different ways to authenticate, right? How do you authenticate who you are? So when you are signing into your workspace, right, make sure you know about multi-factor authentication, Windows Hello, authentication app. What are all of those things? What does it use? What are the different types of authentication that it can use? Is it biometric? Is it a code that gets sent to your phone? Is it a phone call? Be familiar with all of those types of things. What is Microsoft 365 Defender? Again, Microsoft 365 Defender is a combination of things. Microsoft Defender for Identity, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Microsoft Defender for Cloud App Security, also known as a Cloud App Security Broker. Make sure you know what that is too. Microsoft Defender for Office 365. So all those different things come together to create M365 Defender. So that's, again, another example of like the integration, right? So we're thinking about the products. Licensing, right, is another big component. So what is M365 for business? M365 for enterprise, M365 for family, M365 for education. From what I saw on the practice exams and on the actual exam, there's like a lot of focus on the business and the enterprise. So really understand, what those subscriptions entail or what those licensing models entail. And let me see. I would also understand the capabilities of M365 and how the different products tie into that, okay? So you have M365 apps, email and calendaring, meetings and voice, social and intranet, files and content, task management, advanced analytics, okay? These are all components of M365, and then there are different services that integrate within there. So, for email and calendaring, it's Outlook and Exchange. And this is actually in the document as well that I created. So definitely take a look at that, kind of skim through it. I have some notes in there about, how M365 E5 includes My Analytics and Power BI Pro, and E3 subscriptions include My Analytics. So it says, in the notes, it says Workplace Analytics is an add-on for existing M365 licenses. So make sure you know those 3 different tiers for enterprise and kind of what's included, what's not, what do you get with the upper forms of licensing. And then, for M365 Business Basic, it includes Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. And then the apps include, M365 apps just includes the apps and also OneDrive. And then the business standard is a combination of the business basics and the M365 apps. And then the M365 premium is the M365 business standard plus Intune plus Azure information protection. So when you're looking at these charts and you're studying, there's a lot that it has, okay? I would pay attention mostly to what the differences are, what you get with the top tier versus the bottom tier versus the middle tier, and really understand, like, what would you recommend to someone if they were, working in this situation or in that situation. And another thing to kind of pay attention to are, like, what are the limits on things? So number of users, number of days. If you see anything with limits, circle it, highlight it, put a star next to it, memorize it, okay? For an example, M365 Business Premium subscription has a free trial with a max number of 25 users. And another example would be, if you have 300, if you have less than 300 users, business, M365 Business is fine. But if you have anything 300 plus, well, guess what? Enterprise is going to be required. You cannot have less than 300, or you cannot have more than, 300 users on the business subscription. So make sure you kind of know those numbers and how the licensing works. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, so on-premises, cloud, and hybrid. So know which applications are specifically on-prem and which are cloud hybrid. So for example, Configuration Manager is on-prem. Intune is cloud-based. So Intune is a cloud-based, management system, and definitely, know generally how the life cycle of devices from deployment to retirement works. So what services are involved? How would you migrate from on-prem into the cloud? What is Intune? What actions can Intune perform? Okay, how do you connect Intune to on-prem? So if you have a cloud management, system, how do you connect that to on-prem? What is autopilot? How does that work? When would you use it? These are all really important questions. And like I said, there's a lot. And again, this isn't even like a comprehensive list. These are just things that I kind of took the test and I just started jotting down of like what's important, what does someone have to know? You know, and always keeping an eye out for, you know, data. So how and where is data stored? And, you know, some other really big things are like the Service Trust Portal, Microsoft Compliance Center, Microsoft Admin Center. What can you do in these things? What information can you find? Okay. What is e-discovery? What is Microsoft Discover and Respond? Know about those. What are workflows? Okay. What can be used for workflows? So Power Automate, right? That's a big one. I think Power Automate actually used to be called Flow, and now it's called Power Automate. But you know, you can also integrate workflows into Teams as well. So that's another option for that. So make sure you know how you can include workflows into Teams. That'll come up in your studying as well, I'm sure. How does one see report, or how does one receive support? Okay, so when do they receive it? How do they receive it? There's different ways to receive it. So there's support from the 365 Admin Center. There's support from Microsoft Technical. There's support from engineers. You know, and I put in the notes M365 Customer Lockbox. There's like a whole process that goes along with that in order to receive support from engineers. Make sure you know that process. Some other like key things, groups. So what are security groups, distribution groups, M365 groups, mail-enabled security groups, shared mailboxes? Kind of know what the functions of all of those are. Know the different types of admin, global admin, license admin, user admin, billing admin, help desk admin, all of these different people. Kind of understand what their functions are, what they're designed to do, you know, and you'll come across all this stuff if you kind of follow like the Microsoft Learn path, and if you do the practice exams, all this stuff will come up. You know, and so another big one is how can your organization keep track of the health status of services? So there's like the admin app, there's a Microsoft System Center, and there's API. So make sure you kind of know how those things work, when you would use it, when it would be best. Hopefully at this point, you have a pretty good idea of the types of concepts, kind of the mindset behind the concepts, how to study these ideas and concepts. I definitely struggled with figuring out how to study for this one. I think this one was really unique in that way as compared to the Azure. The Azure one was more like, I don't know. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but hopefully this is helpful. I have practice exams listed on the document as well. So there are practice exams from Udemy. Definitely go through all of those exams. If it makes you feel any better, I could not score above a 50% on a practice exam until like 2 days, 3 days before the test. Like definitely when you're studying, make sure that you are doing these practice exams kind of as you go. So you kind of see the types of questions that they're asking, how they're asking it, what types of answers to expect, and then go back to your studying. So definitely like take the practice exams earlier on. I also included a link for test prep training. There's a link on there, and there's actually a 30% off code for that one called Together. I wrote it on the Google Docs, and I only used the first 5 of these exams. There's actually a practice mode where it will show you the correct answer right after you select an answer. So you select the answer, it tells you right away if you're right or wrong, and it'll give a little description. So there are also descriptions in the Udemy practice tests as well. If you click on those links, it'll take you to the part on the site where it'll actually show you, you know, where they got that answer from, and you can read in depth more about it. And then of course, I recommend the Ms900 Learning Path. If you click on the Ms900 Learning Path, you can actually scroll down to see the module. So you'll see the test, and then you scroll down and you can see the modules below there. And then I also put the links for all the individual kind of pages that I went through. And down below, I also put in a video a link for a video for Microsoft Build for AI for accessibility for Microsoft. I think that's the one disappointment I have with this exam, and you'll find out like when you're going through the module, there's actually like a whole section on accessibility and types of features that Microsoft is integrating to make work and learning more accessible for everyone. And they didn't really test on that as much. Don't take my word for it, still study it, but I just didn't really see as much of it in the tests as I think is like really important. So I included that video just for your own fun viewing. It's not like a part of MS900, but check it out if you feel like it. And then I also put a link for the glasses that I got, these cool like blue light glasses, because you know when you're studying, it's a lot easier to study when your eyes are not strained, especially if you're studying late at night or like, you know, for hours and hours. And then I also put the link for the Velocity pens, because I just think it has like the coolest, it feels so much nicer to write on here. So if you have any cool suggestions or recommendations for pens or fun products that you like, I mean, obviously I'm not getting paid for that. I just like recommending things, and I tried out a lot of different pens, and I love school supplies, so there you go. Anyway, hope this is helpful. Definitely check out the Google document. I touched on most things in this video. If you have any questions for me, let me know. You're going to learn a lot through this process. I feel so much more equipped to talk about this, and I feel really excited about what M365 has to offer people. I think, you know, they're just doing a really incredible job of just making sure that they're always on top of things, always improving things, and just wanting customers to have the best experience. So definitely check out User Voice too. I believe that's what it's called. You know, Microsoft is always getting feedback from people to make things better. So hopefully that's helpful. Best of luck with everything. You will do amazing, and I believe in you. So we'll talk soon. Bye.